It's September 4th, and thank you for tuning in to the Driving Forward podcast. Whether you're joining us live or listening in on one of our 18 platforms, including Wreaths Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. Throughout the show, we invite you to share your comments and questions at any time. Your engagement fuels our discussion and helps us navigate the world of transportation and logistics together. Today, we're talking TMS technologies, specifically what it takes to select them. It doesn't matter if you're a 5-person brokerage or a 5,000 truck fleet. Selecting a TMS, a transportation management system, is a critical business decision. We love transportation and we love the technology that supports it. It's some of the most complex technology out there. I enjoy having discussions about the evolution of transportation technology, and this is one of my favorite topics. In my career, I began dispatching trucks on a card filing system with no technology at all other than a phone. I graduated to simple dispatch system that I wrote myself in the mid 90s. And then the first real TMS I used was McLeod. I believe it was on a Unix or Linux platform. In a lot of ways, this launched my career. I spent well over a decade in the operations end of transportation, but eventually I circled in and I've now spent close to 2 decades on the technology side. It's needless to say that I'm passionate about transportation, and I'm just as passionate about transportation management systems and ensuring that companies select and deploy exactly what they need to operate their businesses effectively. With that being said, I encourage you to join us as we chat through a number of questions from our panel. We'll see where this leads. I'm excited to have everyone on board today, and we're doing things a little different. We have Jeremy Thone on. Jeremy's our podcast producer and has been in transportation and logistics for some time. Jeremy's going to be moderating our panel. Jeremy, welcome. You haven't necessarily been on the show yet. Well, I guess maybe not officially. So,
I haven't.
welcome.
Yes, I haven't officially.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'll be moderating today's panel with the GLCS crew, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to bring out the panelists, but today's panel is called High Stakes, High Rewards, an Unbiased Guide to TMS Solutions. So I'm first going to bring out Susan Mayo. She is our Director of Sales over here at GLCS. But for all those folks that don't know you, Susan, would you just mind quickly introducing yourself and then also your first recollection of working with the TMS?
Sure. Hey, Jeremy. Hey, Nate. It's great to be back on the podcast. It's been a few months, but I've been listening and enjoying how much it's growing and being part of it. I've been in transportation for about 30 years now. I spent the bulk of my career connecting companies to various technology platforms and partners, and also connecting the partners. So, we tend to think, we love working with trucking companies and logistics firms, but we also, and myself included in that, spend a great deal of time connecting partners, so I love being able to kind of knit those stories together and continue some of those relationships, because it's rarely just one solution, for any company. It's usually going to take a family of us to bring a complete solution to the table. So I spent a lot of time in telematics, so black boxes that brought out data, construction industry, a lot in the T&L space. And then I also spent years at one of the major TMS platforms. So probably about a decade ago was when I first started learning more about the TMS and getting into it. And the main thing was, fielding the questions from my existing customers and prospects about how to get more out of the technology.
Makes sense. Thanks for that. Now I'm going to bring Ed Streeter, our other panelists, to the crew. So Ed, would you mind introducing yourself, what you do at GLCS, and then also what's your first recollection working with the TMS?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for having me on. I appreciate it. So my background, I've been in the transportation industry for over 30 years as well. Started off on the operations side, ran some trucking companies, and with different freight hauling. I did some intermodal and did some reefer freight and things like that. Made the move over into the IT side about 25 years ago. And like Susan, have worked for some major TMS companies and did a lot of consulting and business analyst work as well as project management on them. With regards to my first experience with a TMS, I remember back a long time ago, I was hired by a company. They wanted to start their own trucking fleet. They're a manufacturer based out of Midwest, and they brought me on to start the fleet. And so I was employee number one on the trucking side. And one of the first things I had to do was find a TMS that I could use to dispatch our fleet. It was a small fleet at the time. There was only 5 trucks, over the road fleet. And so I shopped around, didn't really know what I was doing. And probably the company that I selected is still in business. I'm not going to mention their name, but it, um, it was a challenge. And I struggled quite a bit because at the time, I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know what to look for and what should be the things that I should be looking out for. And since then, I've got a lot more experience, and I know exactly what to be looking for, and what to advise people on doing in that. So yeah.
And then Nate, you're no stranger to anyone, but would you mind introducing yourself and what was your first recollection of working with the TMS, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. Nate Johnson. I'm the CEO and founder of GLCS. And so with the true TMS, with the actual TMS, not something that we put together. One could actually say that the card filing system was a transportation management system. So, moving card filing, you would write down orders, and we had cards for trucks, and we had cards for drivers, and you would clip these together and move them around the room. So one could say that was a transportation management system, although it wasn't a digital system back in the day. So, my answer is that although my true digital transportation management system, outside of one that I had pieced together myself many years ago, what was with McLeod and their old, I think it was a blue screen system prior to them going to their Java program that they're on now, they just recently released something new. So, that was my first experience with that when I moved. I think that was probably in 2001 was the first digital TMS that I worked with. But definitely have fond memories of the card filing system and the complexities that all entailed. We actually used the digital TMS as well to back that up. So everything would get entered in after the fact. It just wasn't good for managing assets at that time. So the digital stringing computers together and whatnot was not our forte back then.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking about in this panel, and then if you could introduce or actually just tell us what a TMS is after this. But so in this panel, we're going to discuss or talk about cloud-based versus desktop advantages and disadvantages of a custom-built TMS, scalability, integrations, and then obviously if you have any comments, please leave them for us, as we'd love to hear from you. But I just wanted to open up the floor to this because we hear this kind of a lot. If you go Google a TMS, you might find assets, non-assets. There's all sorts of stuff there, and there's a million different things that people think of a TMS in general. So if anyone would like to take that question, maybe I'll just let you round robin then, Nate.
Sure, I'll take the first crack at it. So looking at minimal requirements for TMS, it's to manage the movement of goods. The second level is to manage assets, but a TMS ultimately, and they go way beyond that to the level that the TMS truly becomes a full ERP for a company. But at its core level, it is there to manage the movement of goods. Um, Asset management is above and beyond that.
Makes sense. Ed, do you have a different answer for that, or want to take that?
No, he hit it right on the head. That's exactly what it is for. And like you said, when you Google it, because I tried, and you come up with all kinds of different applications, and some are non-asset based, and they're focused more on the brokerage side, and others are they're kind of all over the place. So you've kind of got to narrow down your search and know what you're looking for when you start.
There's also this thing too, where a lot of companies, or maybe not a lot, but sometimes companies won't get buy-in from operations, from sales, from various parts of the organization. How important is getting buy-in early on versus like making like an executive level decision and then sort of making everyone use the TMS without getting the buy-in?
It's critical. And I would kind of go back a step further. Please don't Google before you. No, please just don't. Really requirements, but map out what you're doing. Completely put down on paper, whatever, what you're doing today. Don't jump to requirements in the wish list. What is actually happening? And to your point that you mentioned, Jeremy, talk to every department, every person. And I find that sometimes this doesn't happen because people don't want to, get people too upset early that there might be a big change coming. But this is really critical to know what's happening today. I would say do that before you start any search, even a search, and also talk to your peers. I've had the privilege of kind of traveling around the country with Nate over the last couple of years. He's been able to speak at a few benchmarking groups. If you're not part of one, get in one. There are opportunities to do this remotely, but talk to peers in the same industry. So start having those, internal and external conversations first before you hit the World Wide Web.
You mentioned in requirements gatherments that stood out to me. So when we're talking about, and we could all kind of chime in here, but like, let's talk a little bit about like nice to haves, like versus like must have type things for TMS. If anyone wants to start, that'd be awesome.
There's in the beginning, it's not about nice to haves. It's all about must haves. When you're looking at requirements, so we recommend, everyone builds out your current state and what do you need today to do business. Then, you have to look into the future. Why are you making the change? There's no point in replicating current state to make a change in the future. What do you want out of your future state, and what is your requirement out of future state? So then, what's nice to have in your current state, and what's nice to have in your future state also. So, and you're gonna likely get a lot of these things yourself. Mapping requirements is a lot harder than most people actually really get into it. When you look at the way that we map requirements versus the way that lots of people probably build them out themselves, there's different levels of that. You can get very deep level requirements. You can get kind of mid-level requirements, and then you get bullet points. And just start at the bullet points in the beginning and understand what you need. But then, they need to be able to communicate those requirements, those bullet points to the vendors, to the prospective vendors that are out there. So Ed, you do this a lot. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, when requirements are so important, and even when you're making out those bullet points, and you're meeting with the staff at your company, and you're going through everything that you think is a requirement, you won't get it all. You'll miss something, and at some point, somebody's going to say, "I never thought of that," or "Oh yeah," or they make the assumption that it's just assumed that it's already covered. And it has to be very detailed, and you have to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that you haven't missed anything. Because it can be, if depending on how far down the road you go with your process, you don't want to get halfway into a project and realize, well, they can't do X or they can't do Y, and now we need to put in some sort of change request on the project or whatever.
So a key thing with requirements that a lot of companies don't understand, those requirements that you're going to take to prospective vendors eventually evolve into scripts that you test against when you're going live, when you're testing the solution, and then eventually as you're training the solution. So all of this evolves as you go along, and the more work that you put in up front, the less work you're going to have to do later on, and the less issues you're going to have at go live. So capturing all the requirements in the beginning, and then you're never going to capture all the requirements, but capture all the critical requirements in the beginning eventually evolves into your test scripts, which evolve into your training material. And that whole, it's all about the requirements up front that you approach your vendors with.
How important is it to bring these up during like the demo? Because I see that like sometimes maybe a vendor might do like a canned demo, and this like broker might have very specific requirements going into it, and they need to see those. And maybe the vendor says it's like on the roadmap. So how do you suggest people deal with that specific item?
You want to take that one, Ed?
Well, I chuckled when I heard him say on the roadmap, because you hear that so many times from so many different vendors when they're trying to, when they're making a presentation and they're going through what they think the potential customer is looking for. Their demonstration will be built around that. And so during the demonstration, I've seen it many times when the potential customer will ask a question, can your product do this? And I can't tell you how many times I hear somebody say, well, it's on the roadmap. And that can lead down some paths you probably don't want to get down. It really just I mean, some things it's okay if it's on the roadmap, and it really depends on how big of a requirement it is for you. If it's something basic that every TMS should be doing, but they for whatever reason are not doing, I would probably give that some heavy consideration. One of the other things I would do is when you're going through that process of meeting different TMSs, I would grade them, give them a score, and rate them on how they do in certain areas, and have a good process for that.
Now, is there one TMS for everything, or is it like a multiple?
One other thing, and then I don't know if Susan has something to add to that too.
I do.
Yeah, why don't you take that first, Susan? I saw you just waiting to jump in. So.
Grade them, have that process, believe it, trust it. You know, if you have a buddy at the partner or a relative or whatever, we see that take over many, many times. Relationships are good. They're king. But at the end of the day, if they can't do something, they can't do something.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you want the data from your TMS and you want to run your business with it, and you're looking at objective facts. Apply those facts to this process. You know, again, relationships are important, but you know, when all of the data and all of the information is pointing you a certain way, chances are that that's the way you need to go. So just try to stay as objective as possible.
Fair point.
And I would add to this, if you are just coming forward with requirements during a demo, you failed your process already. So when you brought up the question, Jeremy, is, you know, are you bringing these requirements up during a demo? You need to present these requirements way ahead of a demonstration. You need to eliminate, if you go out and shop 25 prospective solutions, 20 of them should never come to demonstration. you need to eliminate those and just save yourself a lot of time based upon a few discussions around, can you even do this? Or do you even like this solution, or the relationship or the discussion that you're having with the prospective vendor based around the fact that you've supplied them a requirements document of some kind and how they're interacting with it. And that's something in and of itself. So that eliminates a lot of your time. And now you're down to potentially 5 or less demonstrations instead of 25. And you're not, now if you do a demonstration with them and it's the first time that that sales engineer is looking at your requirements, that's probably, unless you really like that product, that could very likely be the last time you look at that product. You know, that's a fail on their sales team to not pay attention to your RFP process. So that's something to always take into consideration as well. So and my 2 bits on, it's in a roadmap for development, or it could be placed in a roadmap. If it's a critical item that's needed for your operation, I'm not a fan of purchasing a product when something doesn't meet the fit. Development is difficult. However, in today's world, it's a little different than what it was 10, 15 years ago. Things can happen faster. The capabilities of the solutions out there are far more flexible, and companies' appetite for development is different than what it used to be. So as long as everyone is very aware of timelines, and you manage that timeline, there's nothing wrong with it being on the roadmap. But if you are working with a solution and more items are on the roadmap than they are not, you likely have an issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fair. What about desktop versus cloud? Is there benefits to one versus the other, or is there a time where you might want to have something on-prem for whatever reason?
Does anybody else want to take this one, or you want me to take it?
You could start.
I'll take it. All right. So lots of reasons based upon on-premise. Now, I would say SaaS versus not SaaS, because everyone wants something in the cloud, and whether or not you host it and you have control of your own data and your own product, I think is the debate, not whether it's cloud or not cloud. So you having control of your own environment, I think, is the question. That I think is the big piece of it today. And some companies are, larger companies especially, have some debate about being a tenant in a multi-tenant environment. And there is a debate to be had there. Do you want to live in someone else's house or in an apartment complex? So that's a debate. On the same hand, if you're a smaller company, you get all kinds of benefits by living in that apartment that you would not get if you had to handle your software yourself. You don't have to manage servers. You don't have to deal with the optimization of them. Typically, your uptime is far higher than what it would be if you were dealing with it yourself. The trade-in on that is you typically don't have access to your data in the way that you would have to a traditional on-premise or product that you would have, perpetual license type product that you would have access to their database, of full access to a database. So there's pros and cons to either one. Largely, we see, all modern products are largely SaaS and multi-tenant. Many of them have the ability to be single tenant if you pay for it. And I think, and the larger the entity that you work with, they're typically, or the larger the entity the customer is, they're typically looking to potentially be a single tenant. Thanks, Bill. So, yeah, I mean, I think to that point, though, it is potentially okay if you're a small operator. So it's fine if you're a small operator. If you're a 5-person brokerage, you want the cheapest software that you can get that makes sense. In some cases, there's free software out there, and who's going to complain about that? On the asset-based side, there used to be on-premise software that was very cheap, and you go back to Dr. Dispatch, so you're not paying much with it back in the day. Versus the enterprise software right now is astronomically high. And you go into the SaaS-based products, and that's one of the desires is their price point is significantly lower than some enterprise solutions. So,
do you find, Nate, and this is kind of a follow-up question, do you find that if you're looking for enhancements to your potential TMS, that a SaaS application is less likely to go along with that?
So I don't think we've experienced that yet because there's only one application that's along that line right now. There's only one solution that's along that line right now, and it only has, I think, 16 customers on the enterprise side. The rest of them are all small market and maybe just entering the mid-market. They may have a small sprinkling of true mid-market carriers. So the reality of it is, I don't think we've seen on a small market side, you're going to get what you're going to get. No one's going to go flex and do all the boutique integrations and boutique customizations that need to be done because they ask. There's not enough revenue there for a small organization to pay for that. On the mid-market side, that's a different story, but we haven't seen that change on the SaaS offerings that are out there yet. Your enterprise TMSs are still evolving there. So, we haven't seen SaaS products out of them quite yet to compete there. And our current SaaS products that are up and comers have not acquired that market share. So, I'm not seeing, I think they want to, evolve, and they can evolve fairly quickly. At least right now they can. So, we've seen some interesting things out of them, but what happens when you put 1,000 mid-market customers on them? I mean, we've all lived through that. The three of us at least have. So you know what happens when you have 1,000 mid-market customers and how you're supposed to support that, and how that noise happens. So it's a little different noise than what it's like when you're dealing with a couple. So.
Mm-hmm.
What about scalability? Like, how much ahead of time do you need to know? Like, depending on your size. Like, let's just say you're a smaller broker that has less than 1,000 shipments. That might not be an issue. But if you have 10,000, 20,000 shipments a month, it's a much bigger beast. So, how do you think about scalability?
You want to take that one first, Ed or Susan?
Susan, you want that one?
You can take it, Ed.
Scalability is tough. I think sometimes when you're looking for your potential your new TMS, your eye tends to get directed to the big guys, and you look at those people, and of course they're trying to market themselves not only to the big players but also to the mid market and to the smaller players. So you need to find out from your resources, whether it's at that TMS, the sales side or whatnot, just to find out what the scalability is of that product, and kind of move forward from there. So, and you mentioned brokerage as your example, and I'm probably the one that has the least amount of brokerage experience in this group. So
I'm feeling a squirm underneath that answer, and I realized what I did when I put it on you. So I'll take it. So scalability on brokerage, but I think we can just say general scalability, because this is a very important question, and it's one that we hit we've said many times now, small, medium, and enterprise customers, and there's categorically different solutions that fit different areas within the industry within those different sizes of organizations. So, but specifically on a brokerage, yeah, there's solutions that work within certain spaces, and they're trying to evolve and go up market. And there's certainly ones that we know. There's ones that are up and coming. So it all comes back to requirements. And on a brokerage, I think requirements are different than asset based. But for example, the moment you say LTL, you eliminate a substantial number of solutions. The moment you say parcel, you eliminate more than that. So it comes down to requirements, and the moment you go above 50 million a year in spend, you're probably eliminating a good amount of them, whether they think they should be eliminated or not. The moment you're over 100 million, you're down to a handful of TMSs, and there's a lot of non-asset TMSs out there right now. So, and it's the same thing with asset-based TMSs. I mean, there's a lot of asset-based TMSs that can handle 50 trucks. There's less that can handle 150 trucks. There's very, very few that can handle 500. And effectively, there's maybe a few niche ones that can handle a certain industry here and there, but it's all about how or where and the information that you have. And there are lots of organizations that are attempting to build into this space, and the market share is shifting. And in some cases, one solution loses it to another solution, and then we've seen this game of ping pong going on for many years. So, but the scalability side, demographically, almost everyone starts at the small market and works their way up. We've seen a couple people come in at mid-market, or at least at smaller mid-market, and start to work their way up. And we've only seen, a handful of organizations come in at enterprise and try to grab market share there.
How big of a company do you need to be to build something yourself? Is that like maybe 50 million and up? I mean, obviously that's probably a loaded question, but in general, how much money you have and how much time, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Is the question, how crazy do you have to be?
Not how crazy do you have to be, but it is a crazy endeavor to build your own TMS. But in general, I guess, is there a certain amount of revenue, like 50 million, 100 million, where you might want to go build your own TMS just because the requirements are not going to be, you're going to have such different requirements essentially that maybe the market doesn't have something exactly what you want?
I don't think there's any revenue requirement that is out there. It comes down to what do you want and do you want to build it? So should you build it is a different question. The cost to sustain that product, that cost to continue to support it, can be exponential, but it comes down to requirements. What do you need? What's the cost of that? And what are you really trying to build? If you're just looking for something to manage orders and the requirements are fairly simple, being a $50 million organization and building something simple might make sense. But trying to build an asset-based TMS that can handle driver pay and complex rating and cross-docking and whatnot at a $50 million organization, you're going to spend millions and millions of dollars even trying to come up with a solution that can come close to handling that. And then you're going to spend X amount every year just trying to support it. And then once every 10 years, technology is going to double or change, and you're going to have to adjust your solution to handle that infrastructure change, which is going to be a substantial cost adjustment too, which we're seeing with many organizations out there that built or customize the legacy products that they own. So many companies on AS400s, that's great. The AS400 is still alive and running, but all of the ability to keep all of their legacy products up and running, it's difficult. It's costly to do the integrations. It's costly to maintain all these products. All of the custom developers that have been around to keep them alive and running for so many years are all retired and living in Phoenix now. So, or they're not even alive anymore. Because that's how old that product's been around. And no one's coming out of college to support those products anymore. So you're 4 generations in, not 4 decades into that particular solution, and it's the cost of maintenance of it just starts to become so high and so difficult to maintain that it's impossible to see it. So that's where, building your own product, you really have to ask yourself, is this worth it? What's the cost of that? Is this a widget to support my current business need? Or is this a total solution? And am I a large enough organization to carry this for 5, 10, 15 years? And there's no right or wrong answer that's out there industry wide. You are the one that makes that a right or wrong answer. But largely our first response is to buy and augment to support your needs. That's usually what we typically will respond with, is find something that meets your closest requirements and augment that product or build next to that product to meet your need. That's been our answer ever since we came into fruition 8.5 years ago. So we've always had that answer. So.
How important too are like integrations? Because obviously the TMS provider can't build everything. So how important is the TMS to connect with other systems?
Critical, very much so. And I wanted to talk a little bit about timelines. Back when you're in the requirements phase, people will just kind of establish arbitrary timelines, unless there is some event going on with the business, or maybe a legacy system is dying, something like that. Work with your partner on your timeline to establish something that makes sense. And by and large, a lot of time that might be because there is an integration needed that's critical to the operation. Something like ELD, mobile comm, driver workflow is a huge part of any organization. Document management is another one, touches every department. So having those conversations early, asking your partner to be very upfront with you about who else might be doing work, whether it's, on behalf of their company, or you're going to be working with another party, meeting them very early on and understanding where they fit into the process, and then letting them help you develop the implementation timeline. There's nothing wrong with that. But just kind of drawing a line in the sand and say, we have to be off this by first of the year, I don't think is the way to go about it, given that you're going to have other players in the game.
And Ed, would you mind answering what an open API is, just so we know how some of this technology in a non-technical way, explain that so how we know how this works?
So it's funny when you mentioned integrations, and I was thinking APIs, because a lot of times when you're talking to a TMS and you ask them, do you integrate with this, or what mileage applications do you integrate with, or what accounting applications do you integrate with, and they'll give you a long list of applications and software that they integrate with, and then you find out, well, it's really a REST API, or it's just a basic API, and what you need is a lot more than that. And so an open API, basically, to answer your question, is just there's an API that's been built for the application on the back end, and it's just open, and it's just a matter of accessing basic data from that application come into your application, and it's going to depend on if it's a REST or not. But it a lot of that is just dependent upon what your needs are for your TMS. So, and I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly, but
No, it did. I appreciate that. And then Nate, did we want to roll commercial or did?
Let's go. Yeah, we're a little late. So
Sounds good.
If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the fast-paced world of trucking and logistics, time is everything. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep transportation and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them. With our industry connections and proactive approach, we keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise.
So let's talk a little bit about user interface. So UI is like super important, but it's kind of hard to qualify. I feel like you almost need to get your hands dirty and go check out the software to actually feel if like you got a use for the UI. But in general, would any of you guys, how do you test the UI? I guess like when you're learning about new systems.
Ask a millennial if they can use it.
There you go.
Put it in front of them, see if they can figure it out.
That's totally fair.
yeah, I mean UI is a thing. So that's a large reason why everyone wants to move off of the legacy. And I don't use the term legacy TMS as an L word. It's actually a badge of honor in a lot of cases. I mean, the legacy TMSs are amazing products, and everyone's trying to take them down. And the large issue with them right now is UI UX. They're ugly. So, but and there's a lot of buttons to click and a lot of different things that you need to maneuver through, and the UI capabilities of new products are frankly pretty amazing. So you can, as an old coworker of mine said, you can play whack-a-mole, which means you just figure out how to use them on your own, just by sitting down and smacking the buttons. So, Ed, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that one of the things that has to be taken into consideration when you're looking at a TMS is how can I, and I hate using this word customize, but how can I build the screen for the specific user that I have in mind? So, for example, a dispatcher is going to want to see something totally different than a customer service rep is going to want to see, or somebody else. So, if you can build those views and those screens so that they would accommodate that position and that person, that would go a long way on the UI side. And that way you don't have a user tripping over a bunch of information and data that they don't need or want to see.
What about support? Like how important is support and just getting support like in a timely manner? Because it seems like, I don't know, maybe a TMS provider might get back to you in a couple days, or maybe it's 24 hours. I'm sure that they all have different service level agreements, but in general, like how do you know if the support is good? Is that something that you go and research online or talk to peers, or how do you solve that?
Talk to peers for sure. Talk to references. You would be amazed, maybe not, how many people ask for them, but they don't actually make the call, set up the meeting, go on site, whatever it takes. But that's really critical, that they not just focus on ease of use, and it's ease of doing business with that partner. And there will be problems. How do they handle them? So have that be one of the first questions.
Fair.
Reference.
And I think one of my experiences with as many implementations that I have done is that during, like, once you've selected your TMS and you're going through the development and the implementation phase and you're going through all of that, they're pretty much holding your hand. as far as support goes, there's somebody there at every email, at every phone call. They're always picking up, excuse me, and they're there right there. And when you go live and they move you over to the regular support, sometimes the trucking company or whomever, the customer, feels as though like when they call or they send an email, all they hear is crickets, because they're not getting the level of response that they were getting during the implementation and the rollout. So it's good to research that and really ask a lot of questions to find out exactly how their support works and how soon can I expect a response, and do you level my issues? So do you rate my issues based on, am I down, or do I just have a problem, or do I want to change the color of a screen, or whatever it is?
Anything to add, Nate?
I kind of concur with both of Susan and Ed. I think, support organizations are what they are. To head that off at the pass, it's all about networking. Social media is strong. You ask questions amongst your peers, you get answers. You typically know ahead of time going in what you're going to get. So if you fail to determine what you're going to get before you've purchased the product, then that's kind of on you. You should not be surprised. If you're purchasing a TMS that has so few customers on it that you can't get information out on support, then you need to be very aware of what you're getting into. And that's a choice that you make. There's nothing wrong with being an early adopter on anything, as long as you're well aware of that and you're choosing to do that. Obviously, support would be an unknown in that situation, but with any of the other solutions that are out there, there's typically hundreds of companies involved or on those solutions, and you're going to find out whatever information you want by asking in social media or just searching in social media, whatever you need to find out. So no reason you can't get those answers.
What about upgrades? A lot of TMS providers, SaaS providers provide upgrades pretty regularly. I would say like once a month, quarter, something like that. What should you look for in the upgrades, and how could you keep them, I guess, accountable, if you will, to make sure that they're still staying on track?
SaaS is SaaS. So once again, if it's a true SaaS product, you're catching an upgrade and it's just happening. It should be seamless. On the same hand, that's a positive negative. Maybe you don't want that upgrade. And this is where that mid-market enterprise level becomes a differentiator between the small market where they're just going to get it. But a mid-market may say, I don't want this. And a large market, enterprise market, absolutely may have areas where they don't want it, or you're dealing with SOX compliance that they need to test things out and you can't deploy upgrades onto them. So there's levels of complexity that come in at larger entities that don't take at smaller entities. And so if you change a process, if you just suddenly fix something, you can't do that at larger customers. So but SaaS offers that, whereas a perpetual license or on-premise solution does not, and you end up having to manage that differently, and there's certainly different costs involved. So, those are two different. That's the different path, right? One has a monthly cost, and typically speaking, if you look at a 5-year total cost of ownership, 3 to 5 year total cost of ownership, you're going to be certainly at a 3-year, you're going to be in around the same. At a 5-year, you may be, well, it depends on the solution, to be honest with you. But I suggest you watch that 3 to 5 year total cost of ownership between a perpetual license and a SaaS subscription. The other big question is, I know we're starting to run out of time. The other big question is what happens when you want to move to the next TMS on a SaaS product? We haven't seen a lot of that coming from a mid-market supplier or a mid-market customer, which is, I'm ready to migrate off of my current SaaS product and I want to go to another SaaS product or another solution that doesn't exist yet. And that we haven't encountered much of as of yet. So that will be an interesting path when we get there, because you no longer own that environment. You can't just let it sit on a server for 6 years, sitting idle and hold that data. You have to create a receptacle for all that data to go somewhere. If you want to hold it historically, or put it into some BI tool or whatever the case may be. And that's going to be a cost that we aren't typically factoring into that original purchase.
Makes sense. And then anyone have anything else to add to wrap this up as far as any points that they would like to make?
The only other thing that I would mention is a lot of you need to put some thought into the type of commodity you haul, because there's different TMSs that obviously are geared towards certain type of industries and certain types of commodities. So to go way back to your question at the very beginning, it's really not one size fits all. For a short time there, well, not a short time, for a time there, I was working for an intermodal software company, and that's totally different than what you do on the regular freight side of things. So you just need to be cognizant of that and make sure that when you're looking, you are looking down the right path as far as, does this TMS handle this type of commodity and this type of operation?
Fair point.
Good.
All right. Well, that was a lot. So we'll hit on one little question here. I think we'll kind of circle this one around, which I don't know if we have time to do the nothing without trucking stuff. So let's just go with this for all three of us, or all three of you. And maybe I'll go into it. We'll see. But all right, if you could have any superpower to help you in your role today, what would it be? And start with Jeremy.
Ooh, that's a good question. I would have see-through vision, so I could look into the future and figure out exactly what to build as far as to know what's going to pop for the podcast would be what I would use.
How about you, Susan?
Samantha from Bewitched. Just general, all-around magic.
Just magic.
Nice.
Not a witch. Special powers.
How about you, Ed?
Probably I'd like to have the superpower of being able to read minds, because sometimes when you're on site with a customer and you're asking questions, you're getting answers that you don't really think they mean, or there's a lot of things going on behind you that you're not aware of. So if I could read minds, that would be great.
That sounds like a great one. So, but you have that Professor X thing going on,
Yeah, you like that?
So, I think my superpower at this moment, given how my day has gone and how I'm trying to figure out the remainder of third and fourth quarter, is I wish I could fly. So I do not know how I need to get to so many different places that I need to be in the amount of time that I need to get there. It's just too many places in one time, which we're not even listing out everything that we want to do right at the moment. So, which is a perfect segue to start wrapping up this episode. So, and Carl decided to drop something in, which I didn't read this, and knowing Carl, I probably should have. But I guess it's not that bad. So,
good for Carl.
That is
decide,
perfect, Carl.
really decide our habits define our future. So, Carl, that's probably one of the most inspirational and thoughtful things I've ever heard come out of your mouth. So. Appreciate it, Carl. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on today. I think that was an insightful conversation. Might as well just have everybody hang out here since some of you are involved in some of this stuff coming up. So we'll just wrap this all up together. I figured you stole it. It still was thoughtful. So, all right. Freight movement, as I said before, website is up and running on www.freightfr8mvmt.com. And another freight podcast. We should be dropping a episode tomorrow. I can't remember who we have on it, but we'll have a couple special guests on it. But it will be dropping tomorrow. We have a couple interesting announcements that will be coming out next week with freight movement. And 2025 is looking to be pretty big for us. So that whole organization is kind of kicking off running. So it's been a slow roll this year as we intended, and just kind of gathering momentum whenever you're planning events. It takes time, but 2025 looks to be really interesting there. GLCS will be at Trimble Insight September 15th through 17th. We have a booth. You can't miss us. We're the second booth on the right when you walk into the expo hall. So Susan and I will be there along with Mike Solars Sunday through, I think, Tuesday. It's a day shorter than usual this year. Which we are so thankful for. And last year it was in Vegas. This year it's in Vegas. We're glad it's done with Vegas. So we'll also be at Broker Carrier Summit October 23rd through 25th in Fort Worth, Texas. Was just talking with the Logistics Lounge guys, and we're going to do some podcasting there and do a variety of different things. So that should be a fun event. I'll be in the Dallas Metro most likely the majority of that week. So if anybody's around, let me know. Next week, we have our friend Alex Mai, the Mother Trucker, and we'll be talking about all things life, logistics. He just moved from Florida to Houston, kind of realized the life journey, and real excited to chat with Alex. Caught up with him a few weeks ago. He'll be at Broker Carrier Summit as well, so I'll get to spend some time with him there. Haven't really been able to hang out with Alex since TCA. So I think he was at TCA with us, which we were all super busy there. So the following week, we have something special lined up for National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. So looking forward to that. I know Jeremy's working on a few things. If you have or are interested in participating with us on that, reach out to us and we'll read you in on what we're doing. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd love some help on National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. That's actually the week that we're at Trimble Insight. So we're then crafting up a small carrier panel. Really, it's a small and mid-sized carrier panel. We have a variety of company owners on this. So if you want to be a guest on the show, reach out to us, drivingforward@glcs.net. And love to have you on the show. We have openings, I think, starting in November or somewhere around there. But love to hear your story. Love to chat with you. Stay curious. Stay informed and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for watching.